We've been brainwashed by mainstream media, by government guidelines, nutritional guidelines, to believe we need to eat more plant-based and low-fat. 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. It's a 2022 study. 93% are in a metabolic prison. They are what I call sugar burners in the book. They're relying on food for a short burst of energy, primarily carbohydrates. And that's not a fun way to live because it leads to disease and destruction and a shorter lifespan. But it also, you have to rely on food for short energy. You don't have the ability to burn body fat. You have to eat carbohydrates and snack and graze throughout the entire day just to get by. You rely on stimulants and caffeine and 4-hour energy drinks and Red Bull just to get by. That's not the way that God designed the human body.
I remember just eating all meat and eggs for the first time, just like breaking the addiction to processed foods. And within 24 hours, I was like, dude, I feel amazing. And I'm sure maybe some of that was a little bit mental, but it's also like your body is finally giving it the nutrients that it's been craving for years. So imagine the way that you could possibly light up. It's almost like you've been going through life with a parking brake on, and imagine how good you could possibly feel, like the way you show up as a husband or a wife or in your business, just as a byproduct of nourishing your body with the right foods. Like, I just think that's so encouraging. All right, Mr. Ben Azadi, thanks so much for joining us, brother.
Brett, man, I'm in Austin. We're going to have an amazing conversation.
We always have so much fun when we link up. We met 2022 Keto Kamp before they rebranded to Hack Your Health.
Right.
You've always just been an unbelievably supportive friend in person to us and our brand, and Harry and I appreciate you so much. And it's been amazing for us to see just this unbelievable traction with the launch of your book, Metabolic Freedom. How has that been feeling?
Thank you. And you guys support me too, so the feeling is mutual. It feels overwhelming.
Yes.
In the best way possible, just to see the book out, Metabolic Freedom, get out into the masses. I was just telling you, we just hit the New York Times list.
Congrats,
which
brother.
is, thank you. It's so difficult to do. And it's cool to say, yeah, I'm a New York Times bestselling author, but more than that, it means the message of metabolic health, eating red meat, eating saturated fat and cholesterol, it's getting to the masses, and it's super exciting to see. I'm very grateful. I know we're going to talk about the book today, and it's an honor to be a part of the movement along with you and Harry and all the people in our space.
Definitely, man. It's cool seeing guys like you that have put in so many thousands of hours and reps and iterations because you just believe in this movement so much. And you're one of those guys where you genuinely just want to offer up whatever wisdom you have to help people get healthier. I mean, I'm looking at your YouTube, I'm looking at your, thousands of podcast episodes recorded, thousands of YouTube videos recorded. Yeah. Why was it so important for you to actually create your next form of content in the form of a book versus something visual or audio?
When you hand somebody a business card, chances are they'll throw it away or they'll lose it. When you hand somebody a book, they'll keep it. Or they'll keep it and maybe not read it necessarily, but they might keep it on their nightstand or keep it on their coffee table, and it reminds them, hey, you should probably pick this up and learn something about it. So I love the idea of having a resource in a book versus a business card or even social media content, which is fleeting. If we could get a book into somebody's home or their office, the likelihood of them reading it increases versus a video that's out there. With Metabolic Freedom, the reason I wrote the book, it's not a niche book. I've written a keto book before, a fasting book before. These are niche books. Metabolic Freedom was written for the masses. It's a way to introduce what we teach, the metabolic health, metabolic living, and eating saturated fat, red meat, to the masses in a gentle approach for them to understand how the metabolism works, why red meat is not the villain, why cholesterol is so important for your cells, and how we've been brainwashed by mainstream media, by government guidelines, nutritional guidelines, to believe we need to eat more plant-based and low-fat.
Yes.
So I wanted to write this book that was a huge resource for the masses because we see here, this 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. It's a 2022 study, 93%. That means we're in Austin. If we walked around downtown Austin right here and we saw 100 people on the street, 93 out of those 100 people have metabolic dysfunction. And I know God didn't design this that way. I know God designed us to be self-healing. So I wrote the book to show the problems. The first half of the book focuses on what causes metabolic diseases. The second half of the book are the solutions, ketosis, fasting, your thoughts. And then it's all wrapped together in a 30-day plan for individuals to now apply what they've learned, because we could give them the information, but if they don't apply it, Brett, it's not going to change their life. So I wrote the book to give them the game plan, the step-by-step protocol, and get the average person following a standard American diet into this metabolic health space of keto and carnivore. And if you're already in this space, like a percentage of your audience, there's 265 references and citations. You just learn more about the metabolism. So it fits both categories there. And that's why I wanted to write the book.
Man, it's funny. When you sent me the copy and I started scrolling through it, without what you just said, my immediate thought process was, this is something that I would actually love to buy and just give to my parents, because you're basically just pulling on these high levers that I think Americans are missing and they really need. And the problem is, like, you take my dad, for example, who's in relatively good health. He's on Instagram, and there's pros and there's cons of this influx of social media content creators in the health and wellness space. I would say the pros are that you get access to like alternative medicine that you would never really get through your conventional doctor. The problem is, I also feel like there's so much fear porn where people are scrolling. They're like, look, I just want to lose 30 pounds and get those metabolic health markers in a good stance, but they don't really know where to start because there's such an influx of competing information. And so when I was reading your book, I'm like, yes, there is really detailed biohacking stuff. You throw those little tidbits in towards the end, but it's really just focusing on pulling the high levers and helping someone like my parents understand like what foods are good and bad for you, what should you be doing and not doing. They could read it, digest it, and hopefully improve their lives.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's exactly why I wrote it. I wanted to get out into the masses, and it is. You know, we have a lot of copies sold. We hit the list. It's super cool to see. It just came out a few weeks ago. And we'll take a deep dive into some of the principles, but it's aligned with exactly what you and Harry teach, the Meat Mafia team. It's we got to go back to these ancient healing strategies, ketosis and fasting, and eating animal products, eating the stuff that the body loves, and lowering inflammation. When you do that and remove the interference, the body will heal itself. I don't care if you're 21 or 91. I don't care what your health history is or your circumstances. The body will heal itself as long as you remove the interference. And I think I did a good job kind of showing what those interferences are in the book.
Well said. And you absolutely did. It's funny too, because you and I have been around the space. Every single statistic that adds shock and awe value when you hear it. There was something about reading your introduction. You had mentioned that 2/3 of the country is overweight or obese. And I was just conceptualizing that. And, whether, you're down in Miami, I would say that's a health and wellness bubble. Obviously, Austin is a huge health and wellness bubble. And then, I travel a lot. So like I go to the airport, and if I do the math in my head, I'm like, yeah, it probably is out of every 2 to 3 people that I see in the airport outside of the bubble are overweight or obese. And it just, I don't know, the statistic is so simple, but it just blew my mind thinking about how backwards we've actually gotten.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? And you're right. We live kind of in our own bubble. Austin is a health-focused city. Miami is a health-focused city. And I see the same thing when I go to airports. I see the same thing when I'm outside of Miami. We live in a sick nation. And what's interesting and alarming is that we spend $4.6 trillion every year on healthcare in the U.S. And I learned this from Andy Schoonover, our buddy over at Join Crowd Health. And if that was a GDP, it would be the 4th largest GDP in the entire world. Yet we're sicker than ever before, and pharmaceutical companies are richer than ever before. And 1 out of every $4 spent on healthcare is spent on diabetes, primarily type 2, which we know is a metabolic disease that is 100% preventable and 100% reversible. We're going to bankrupt this country. Yet we are one of the richest nations, if not the richest nation in the world, and we rank around 37 amongst nations. There are third world countries that are healthier than us. We've got a problem. We've got a huge problem, but we also have the solution. And I think there's a huge movement now with the MAHA movement, with focusing on metabolic health, that people are becoming aware, and they're sick and tired of the status quo. I posted a podcast, Harry, 4 days ago on my YouTube channel and my podcast titled 36 Dangerous Foods RFK Jr. Just Banned. And I just looked at my stats. It has 2.2 million views in 4 days.
Wow.
And there are 21,000 comments on it in 4 days. And when I post things like that, I'm always conscious because I don't want to be political at all. And once you mention MAHA, it automatically becomes political. And my audience is mixed, and I respect all, left, right, in between. So I was worried that I might get, some hate, some people unsubscribing. I hate Trump. I hate RFK. When I read the comments, and I read hundreds of them, and I replied to hundreds of them, there were people saying, I hate Trump. I hate RFK, but I agree with this ban.
Wow.
I hate him. He's ridiculous. His stance on vaccines, he's a kook, but I agree with this stance. I didn't see one person say he's wrong about this. That is super cool, bro.
21,000 comments, not one.
I didn't read all 21,000 to be fair, but I've read hundreds of them, and not one of them was saying, I don't agree with this. Even if they hated Trump, hated RFK, they agreed with the movement, because we have a problem. We have these toxic ingredients in our food supply, I think we all could see everybody's unhealthy and we need a change. And it's cool that it's starting to happen.
It is cool. Yeah, it's amazing just to see the response to that video, the comments, people literally saying, I despise Trump, I despise RFK, yet they still agree to the message. It's like so many Americans have just been waiting for someone or a body of people to just speak the truth that a lot of us have been implementing in our own lives, right? Like, my ulcerative colitis completely gone within a few years of eating all red meat. I know you lost, what did you lose, 80 pounds?
80 pounds in 9 months, yeah.
Unbelievable. Just by deciding to gravitate towards the things that you talk about in this book. And you see family, friends, loved ones just like suffering, not even living, essentially like dying this really slow death. You're like, well, this could be so avoidable if they just had access to the right information. And I think we're going to get there. And I think your book is a really good step in the right direction.
Amen, bro. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. For the listener, what's the bet, how would you describe your overarching health journey to kind of get to this point now too? Because I love hearing people's stories and so many guests, and I'm sure you too, out of the 400 episodes, I would say over 50% of our guests have had this unbelievable healing journey, just gravitating towards the right levers that ultimately was the gateway to restore their health. And then that's all they talk about now.
Yeah. The pain to purpose message.
Pain
right?
to purpose, baby.
Wow, 400 episodes, huh? That's
over 400, brother.
In like what, 3 years?
Yeah, about 3 years.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
That's super cool. That's a lot of episodes in 3
Yes.
years. That's very rare.
Thank you.
The average podcast host who starts a podcast, 90% of them don't get past 10 episodes because they see how much work it is. You're at 400 plus. That's respect, bro. I love it.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah. So you mentioned it, I was very unhealthy growing up. I was obese as a kid. People look at me and I'm lean and healthy now, but for 20 plus years, I was physically obese, mentally obese. I was struggling with, as an adult in my 20s, I was struggling with high blood pressure, erectile dysfunction, low testosterone, prediabetes, hypertension, and I didn't know what to do, like so many people out there. And I made my appointments with my doctor, and I explained my symptoms to the doctor. And never once did the doctor ask me, what are you eating? Let's talk about your lifestyle. No, what he asked me is, or what he was thinking, what can I prescribe for this young man? And he prescribed different medications, but I felt like I was too young. 23 years old, prescribing medications for high blood pressure, and suggesting to go on testosterone replacement therapy at 23 years old. I felt like I was too young to do any of that. But I was hopeless and I was lost, and I was actually ready to just give up on life. I was on the internet looking for ways to end my life. And I didn't go through with it because I kept thinking about my mom. I didn't want to cause devastation for her. She is my superhero, and I didn't want to cause that for her. So it forced me to figure things out. I was rock bottom. I wanted to give up. I was obese. So at this point, I was 250 pounds. I had 34% body fat, classified as being obese.
Wow.
And my transformation actually started with my mindset. I started to read books from Dr. Wayne Dyer and Bob Proctor, and the books helped me take ownership and responsibility, which I believe is the first step to great change. I stopped blaming my genetics, my slow metabolism, my enabling family members, and I took ownership. And when you take ownership, that's when you start to take a step into a great change. And then I started to eat real food, move my body, and I went through this incredible transformation. I lost 80 pounds, as you mentioned, in 9 months. I went from 34% body fat at my highest to 6% body fat at my lowest, which is a complete transformation. And yeah, I achieved a physical six-pack, which was great, but I also achieved a mental six-pack, and all of my mental illness and my depressive thoughts and the suicidal thoughts, that went away. And that was 17 years ago. I've kept the weight off. I've gotten healthier ever since. I'm 40 now and I actually feel the healthiest that I've ever felt in my entire life. And that's a testament that if I can do it, like anybody can do it. I was in bad shape. So that's my pain to purpose story. Along the way, I was a personal trainer. I had a gym. I operated a gym in Miami. And then eventually in 2018, I rebranded to Keto Kamp, and then started the YouTube channel and the podcast and just went full on with that. But that's kind of the journey, how it started 17 years ago.
Man, literally from rock bottom, brother. I can't imagine the mindset you must have been in at 23 years old, seeing you now, your energy, like the care you have for other people, the amount of people you're impacting, and just like one, if God forbid, if you chose to make that decision, like how many people would be missing out to ultimately what you're tapping into with your mission. I mean, it's like, I think young men really do have a mental health epidemic right now. Like I know multiple young guys that have unfortunately chosen to take their own life. And I don't know, I think there's a correlation between a lot of the stuff you're talking about in this book, plus the mindset stuff that Wayne and Bob and Tony Robbins and these guys are tapping into. I think so many men are just like, they're dying to fulfill their purpose. They just don't know what it is. And I think that's partially responsible for this mental health epidemic right now. But man, just so grateful that you chose to do the right things and get yourself into the shape that you're in now. And I also think it's interesting that you started with Bob and Wayne before you got into a lot of these nutritional and dietary lifestyle levers. It was almost like your belief came first and then the healing came second. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. We think the old adage is that you have to see it to believe it, but it's actually the opposite. Like you just said, you believe it, then you see it. So yeah, it started with your thoughts, started with my thoughts, and taking ownership and responsibility. I think a lot of people are playing the victim, and that doesn't serve you. Yeah. It serves you in the moment because it feels good to blame your problems on somebody else, but in reality, it's not serving your future self. I remember reading Dr. Wayne Dyer. He said something in his books that really lit me up and made me really take responsibility. He said two things. He said, number one, if you keep blaming other people for your problems, like I was, you would have to hire a psychiatrist for everybody in your life in order for you to get better. Then he would say, responsibility is where it starts. And that word is, responsibility is your ability to respond to life. When your ability to respond to life is poor, you get poor results. When your ability to respond to life is great, you get great results. That is your responsibility, your ability to respond. And there's a moment between stimulus. Viktor Frankl said this in Man's Search for Meaning. Meaning, there's a moment between stimulus and your response to the stimulus. And in that moment lies your power, right? So when there's a stimulus, meaning somebody says something about you, you lose your job, whatever the stimulus is, a negative, you have the ability to respond or to react to that. And 97% of people are just reacting and blaming. But when you take responsibility and you respond, then that's where your power lies. And I think a lot of people have outsourced their health and their metabolic powers to their doctor, to the government, to mainstream guidelines. And we need to take the power back. We need to strip the power away from big pharma and big food and give it back to us, the people. And I think conversations like this, I know your podcast and your work with Harry is getting the power back to the people and helping them take ownership and responsibility.
100%, man. It's like all we're trying to do is, I think you see a lot of people in the content creation space, in the health and wellness content creation space, where it almost seems like health is their God in a lot of ways. And I understand why. Like I know the feeling of, people following you because you're like the carnivore healing guy that was shitting blood 30 times a day. And like, I understand how it almost creates this positive reinforcement loop towards that thing. But I would say now, being in year 3 of this, we just think about health as like this amazing base layer to go out and do incredible things with your life. And I think what you said about the Viktor Frankl piece is so important. I had this feeling last week where someone had said something to me from a business perspective that really pissed me off. And I remember having this feeling of, like, outside of physical pain, pretty much everything is that stimulus that I can choose to respond to. Like, yes, this person is saying that thing to me, but it's ultimately me that's putting emotion behind it and taking it personally versus like figuring out whatever response, and downloading the right mental software to be able to deal with that. So the reason why I'm drilling into this a little bit is like pairing the Metabolic Freedom toolkit that you've prescribed in your book with the mindset and spiritual toolkit. You blend those two things together, man. That is a gateway to become an entirely new person, which you're evidence of too.
Yeah, you become unmessable with. I think we all want to be unmessable with. You're unstoppable. And
yes,
chapter 10 of Metabolic Freedom is my favorite chapter, and it's all about how your thoughts influence your metabolism, longevity, or disease and destruction, essentially. And that's the most important thing, to change your thoughts, to change your attitude. Earl Nightingale called your attitude, your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. And when you change that, it's an inside-out job. When you change that, you want to treat your body better, so you eat better food. You cut people out of your life that are toxic relationships. You take a stand for what you believe in. You have higher conviction. And it really starts with that. That was my story in 2008. And to this day, I think 95% of our results, even with our health, will be the mindset part. 5% will be strategy. And chapter 10, I think, is the most important piece of the book, Metabolic Freedom.
Okay, beautiful. I can't wait to dig into that
Yeah,
too.
you're going to love that part, bro.
Yeah. So for someone that's we have a lot of guys, probably like 25 to 32 that listen to the show.
Okay.
I would love for them, like this is kind of a plea to the audience to like take this podcast and send it to their parents as well, just to get some really good alpha. For someone that's listening to the show for the first time and coming across you for the first time, like what should people, like what does metabolic freedom actually mean to you, and why should people care about it?
The word freedom, I think we all desire. We want financial freedom. We want time freedom. We want metabolic freedom. It's a very desirable word. And we live in the United States, the greatest country in the world, and we are blessed to have freedom. Unfortunately, most people are not metabolically free. They're in a metabolic prison. They are what I call sugar burners in the book. They're relying on food for a short burst of energy, primarily carbohydrates. And that's not a fun way to live because it leads to disease and destruction and a shorter lifespan. But it also, you have to rely on food for short energy. Mm-hmm. You don't have the ability to burn body fat. You have to eat carbohydrates and snack and graze throughout the entire day just to get by. You rely on stimulants and caffeine and 4-hour energy drinks and Red Bull just to get by. That's not the way that God designed the human body. We were designed to have metabolic freedom, where you could take any food, whether it's carbohydrate, protein, or fat, use it for energy and burn fat and feel good. Or you don't eat food, like you fast, and you burn your stored body fat for energy, or your stomach, your love handles. You take sunshine for energy. That's metabolic freedom. You take whatever substrate is available for energy, you burn it, and you burn fat. When you have that sort of life and metabolism, you could go hours without food. You could go days without food. You don't have to be at the, let's say, post office line and you're hangry because you haven't eaten in 2 to 3 hours. So you're miserable to the staff there. You're miserable to the people around you. When you're not metabolically free, you're not your truest version of yourself. Your personality declines. Your relationships decline because you're just not healthy. You're not thriving. So we all want to be our true version of ourselves, the way God designed us. And it's not that difficult. It's not about calories. It's not about the things we've been taught. It's actually very easy. We don't have to rely on willpower. So metabolic freedom is what I want for everybody. For those watching here, whether you're a man or a woman of all ages, like metabolic freedom is the way that you were designed to live, the way God designed you to thrive. And the body is so miraculous. You know this. You're a perfect example. When you remove the interference, the body will heal itself.
Yes.
I mean, you were shitting blood 30 times a day.
Yes, truly. Like my life was revolved around where is the closest bathroom. Like I was on, I remember being on dates when I was 21 years old, and the girls that I was going out with thought I was like a coke addict because I was going to the bathroom 3 or 4 times. I was trying to live my life, young kid in New York City.
Wow.
And, essentially welting away and dying and just being told I was going to be on all these drugs and medications and gravitating towards the things that you talk about in this book. It was the gateway to me getting rid of all the inflammation and the microinflammation and getting into the best shape of my life. And I love the word interference because what I've noticed for myself, being about, I think I've been off drugs for close to 5 years. When I put the interference back in, that's when my symptoms come back. When I remove the interference, that's when I feel as good as I can possibly feel. So like strict carnivore for me is always whenever the interference and the inflammation is triggered, I go back to that. And whenever I gravitate towards those things, I'll start to feel those old symptoms.
You said something really, really interesting there. You said you paid attention to your symptoms. And I think most people don't do that. They'll look at their symptoms because we've been brainwashed to view the symptoms as the problem, something that we hate. I hate my symptoms. Let's have a medication or a surgery, something to mask it. But symptoms are something we should actually be thankful for, because when you use it the way that you just said, as a check engine light for your body, then it helps to guide you into healing, right?
Yes.
It helps you identify the interference. If somebody went out, let's say last night in Austin, and they had 2 entire pizzas, they drank a whole bunch of beer, they had pasta with spaghetti and meatballs, they had, let's say, a whole bunch of other desserts like ice cream, they just gorged themselves. The next morning, they're going to have symptoms. They're going to have probably acid reflux, they might be constipated, they might also have diarrhea, the opposite, indigestion. And the average person will make an appointment with their doctor because they're experiencing these symptoms. And they'll explain the symptoms to their doctor. And the doctor will nod the head and say, no worries. We have I could write you a prescription for an antacid, anti-flatulence. Here are 5 prescriptions. Go to the pharmacy and go pick them up. Now, if the doctor would have just asked the question, what did you eat last night? The person would have listed all the things they ate. The doctor could have said, Well, that's why you have the symptoms. Just don't do that again. Remove that interference and you won't have the symptoms. But instead, we send them off with 5 medications and they might give them temporary relief. And then it leads to other symptoms. And now they're on this vicious cycle. You could see how big pharma and big food and big gov, it's a brilliant subscription model. So we need to look at those symptoms, like you just said, as a gift. It's your innate intelligence, this inner physician, showing you a check engine light so you could open up the hood, remove the interference. For you, it's going back to carnivore, so those symptoms go away. When you take care of the interference, the symptoms go away by default. One more example, Sarah, Brett. Weight gain, obesity, weight loss resistance. I was obese. I never had a weight problem. If you're watching this and listening to this right now and you're overweight, you don't have a weight problem. There's no such thing. It's a weight symptom. When we focus on calorie counting and cutting calories, it's treating the symptom. You see, we don't lose weight to get healthy. We get healthy to lose weight. And when we focus on the symptom, which is being overweight, it will lead you to failure. When you focus on the cause, which is inflammation and hormones, the weight comes off as a side effect, right? So it's the same thing with being overweight. It is your weight symptom, not your weight problem. You can see how it's a paradigm shift for a lot of people. But once you understand that, that is the way the body works. Look at your symptoms as a gift, not the actual problem.
I love that. And I love your approach to intuition too. And I kind of feel like that's the whole end game of your book, right? If all you did was allow the reader to develop intuition, you would be thriving for the rest of your life. And a lot of people know you for your work in the biohacking space, but I view your biohacking work as a means to develop that intuition, which is kind of how I do it too. Like I like wearing an Apple Watch. I like getting my blood work done. I like getting supplements and peptides and things like that. But I'm trying to use that data to gather information so that I can go out and live my life and actually understand what makes me feel good, what makes me feel bad, and not need to necessarily rely on those devices, but know that they're always there. And I find that for a lot of people, like I love the feeling of, you know, getting a smartwatch or getting an Oura ring and tracking a lot of my food in the beginning, but knowing that, hey, the end result of this is to be able to develop intuition. So like last night, I went to Sushi by Scratch, which is this incredible omakase place. They actually have a spot in Miami too.
Oh, yeah.
Had one of the best meals of my life. I woke up a little bit bloated this morning, but I'm like, I literally know it's just, you know, I'm holding onto water because of all the sodium last night, and then I just get right back on track. Like normally, I don't obsess over it, I don't overthink it, but I think that's intuition as well.
That is, exactly. And you understood exactly what happened there, right? You didn't go and get a medication for the, the bloating. And
Exactly.
It's like, okay, you had the sushi, you had a whole bunch of carbs.
Pretty good amount. 18 pieces of, yeah.
So that's why, right?
Yes.
And now you just go back on track. And you're right with the Oura Ring and the stats out there. They're great tools. It's great data. But we also don't want an Oura Ring or an Apple Watch or a Whoop Band to tell us how to feel today. It gives you ideas and trends and clues. But if you wake up and you feel great, even if your Oura Ring is off, don't let that change the way you feel, right?
Yes.
Like you feel great. That's the intuition. Your body is always the best resource for that. Like if you wake up and you feel well rested, your energy levels are great, you feel focused, even if your sleep score was poor or your HRV dropped or whatever it was, that's how you feel is way more valuable than what the ring is showing. So that it's great data, but it's not the only thing we want to pay attention to. To your point, we want to pay attention to our intuition and how we feel.
Yeah, you still got to go out and live your life, right?
Yes.
Even if your sleep score is 34 or whatever, the work still has to get done too.
Yes.
Doesn't mean like smoke yourself with a CrossFit workout if that's what you're supposed to do, but like, you know, tone it back and the work still has to get done ultimately.
Exactly, bro.
So from a nutritional standpoint, for someone that's like just wants to get in the game, they're like, look, I've got, 30 excess pounds of body fat. Maybe you recommend them getting a DEXA scan. Maybe we could dig into that. But from a nutrition standpoint, like what should they be thinking from a food standpoint, just to like rewire what they're eating if they're coming on? Maybe they're eating 60 to 70% of their calories in the form of processed foods. Like what's the starting point for them?
Yeah, it's a good question because that's most 93% of Americans are there right now.
Yeah.
Starting point would be to just focus on whole foods. I know it sounds so like repetitive. We hear that before, but I'll give you an example of what I mean by that to really make sense. When we go to the grocery store and we look at, let's say, a potato or an avocado or grass-fed beef or eggs, is there an ingredients list? No. I mean, it's just what you see. It's a single ingredient. It's what you see. But instead of the potato and you go to the inner aisle and buy potato chips, there are 20 ingredients in that potato chip. There are artificial fats. There are inflammatory fats, artificial ingredients. So potato to potato chips, that's the processed version. That's the bad version, right? So we want to eat as much as possible single ingredient foods. That's the starting point right there. Single ingredient foods. And then at the same time, we want to gradually lower our carbohydrate intake. The reason why this is important, the carbohydrate piece, is because insulin is a key player here. And for those who don't know, insulin is a hormone in your body. We have over 600 hormones in the body. Only one hormone signals fat storage, and that hormone is insulin. That's it. Now, cortisol works with insulin to signal fat storage, but every hormone needs to work with insulin to store fat. Insulin is an energy sensor. When it signals a lot of energy coming in, like carbohydrates, it tells the metabolism, store fat. And what's really important here is that you could have full-blown insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemia, for 6 to 14 years without your fasting blood sugars changing at all, or even your A1C changing.
Wow.
And that's a Whitehall study too, I put in the book. So people go to their annual doctor's appointment. They get maybe their fasting glucose, which is great, get it done. Maybe their A1C, but you could have, if you're not getting a fasting insulin blood test, you're missing the most important piece here, because when your insulin levels are high from processed foods, especially carbohydrates, your pancreas will produce massive amounts of insulin to clear the excess glucose until it cannot. Then you get diagnosed with prediabetes or diabetes, and then that opens up the door for autoimmune conditions, cancer, heart disease, a whole host of diseases. But if you got a fasting insulin blood test, I make the case in the book, it's the most important blood test to get done for your metabolism. You want to see that fasting insulin between 3 and 6. If it's over 6, there's some work that needs to be done. And what's crazy is that, number one, doctors don't order a fasting insulin. And that's because there's not a medication to prescribe when you have a high insulin, only when you have a high glucose. So why should they run it? So you probably have to pay out of pocket. Insurance might not cover it. The good news is that it's cheap. It's like 30 to 50 bucks. So get it done. Yeah, you go into that test, 12 to 14 hours fasting. It's a blood test. And the report that comes back is between 3 and 28, the lab report. So if it's 17 or 21, it will not be flagged on that report, but no, that is insulin resistance. You want your fasting insulin to be between 3 and 6. How do you get it there? Eat the single ingredient foods, number one. Number two, gradually lower your carbohydrates, because carbohydrates, as you know, Brett, will spike your blood insulin more than protein and fat. So you want to swap out and lower your carbs and swap them out with protein and fat. You do that, and then you eliminate snacks in between meals. You have 3 meals a day. You do that just for a couple of weeks. You're going to lower inflammation, lower insulin. You'll start to lose weight, have more energy, get better sleep, have less joint pain, less brain fog. And it happens within days. In just a matter of days, bro. Yeah. Just doing those 3 simple things, right? So lowering carbs, replacing them with protein and fats, and then eliminating the snacks. That's where I would start with that individual.
Yeah, sometimes, this could be a bit of a placebo, but I know that if I've ever gotten off the rails, or even when I went carnivore for the first time in 2019, I remember just eating all meat and eggs for the first time and just like breaking the addiction to processed foods. And within 24 hours, I was like, dude, I feel amazing. And I'm sure maybe some of that was a little bit mental, but it's also like your body is finally giving it the nutrients that it's been craving for years. So imagine the way that you could possibly light up. It's like for someone that's listening to this, it's almost like you've been going through life with a parking brake on. And imagine how good you could possibly feel, like the way you show up as a husband or a wife or in your business, just as a byproduct of nourishing your body with the right foods. Like, I just think that's so encouraging.
Yeah, it is, bro. And even if it is part of it's placebo, I wouldn't negate it either. Placebo is very powerful. And I talk about that in chapter 10. You're going to love chapter 10. I hear this a lot. You might get this too. It's expensive to do all these things, right? We hear about different biohacks, red light, sauna, cold plunge, and then we hear about like eating organic, eating grass-fed, and I get a lot of comments, and they'll say, this is expensive. I don't have this in my budget, and I'm respectful of those individuals. You do the best you can with your current resources. I always say that. And it may be more expensive to be healthier. True, maybe.
Yeah.
But you know what's even more expensive? Wait until they hand you the bill for being sick. How much were your treatments when you were going through the issues with shitting every time, 30 times a day?
Over $50,000 per infusion every 8 weeks.
$50,000 per infusion every 8 weeks.
And I was on it from 2016 to 2021. So
oh my gosh.
So I think it was a few $1 million total, or close to it.
Did your insurance cover all of that?
thankfully, yes, my parents had really good insurance, and so I was under the age of 25. So
That's rare, though.
Yes, but imagine if I wasn't, I would be financially crippled for life.
You would be. You would be in so much debt, right? So that's a perfect example of what I mean. If you would have spent the money earlier on maybe just organic grass-fed meat, you would have saved millions of dollars there if you had to pay out of pocket, right? So yeah, it might be expensive. The bill for getting healthy is a little bit more money than not being healthy. But when you get sick, that bill is something you cannot pay.
Definitely.
And when you treat your health casually, you will end up a casualty. Yes. It will happen sooner rather than later. You mentioned you're not your truest personality, you're not your truest self. You don't show up for your husband, for your wife, for your children. You rob yourself of health, and you rob your community of your true personality and the gifts that God gave you. So it's so important to prioritize your health. It is the number one asset that we have. Jim Rohn used to always say, take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live. And that is true. We have this soul, and the body is this meat suit for the soul. And we want to treat it as best as possible so we could fulfill this desire, this unique desire of why God put us here on earth.
Definitely. And I agree with you, Ben. I do have a lot of sympathy for people that are a little bit budgetarily constrained. And what I'm noticing is that, like, I'll go on DoorDash and just check out prices because I'm always curious about this stuff. Like, due to inflation, like, McDonald's is not as cheap as it used to be. Like, I'm running the numbers. Like, look, if the best you can do is go to Walmart or Target, we live in an area, in a time period now where you can actually get like decent quality meat from either of those places. You can get avocados, you can get sweet potato. A lot of, those places are starting to carry epic beef tallow too. Like, you can get almost all the single ingredient real foods that you're talking about at these budgetary grocery stores. The cost is really just the time of learning how to prepare these foods, I feel like, because when I'm running the numbers, I'm like, I don't even think it's cheaper to go to McDonald's than it is to make a basic lunch or dinner that I eat every single day. Do you think that's true?
That's interesting. I haven't ran the numbers on that, on McDonald's and fast food, but with inflation going up, here's what I know to be true. When you practice intermittent fasting, you save money.
You do save money.
Because you're skipping a meal. And I did the math because I do a lot of like keynotes at entrepreneur events and real estate events, and I always talk about fasting for entrepreneurs because it just enhances their brain function. And I say you also save money. I did the math. If you skipped one meal a day, let's say you skipped breakfast and you had lunch and dinner, and let's say you just did that Monday through Friday, and let's say you spent $15 on that breakfast, but now you're skipping that, so you save $15. You save $3,900 every year doing that, and you get back 4.5 days if you spent like 30 minutes on that breakfast.
Wow.
So you get time and money back, right? So to answer your question, you could actually save more money by implementing intermittent fasting. And it's really not that expensive to eat clean these days, to your point. And I will also say this, the cheapest meat at Walmart is healthier than the most processed carbohydrate out there.
Definitely.
So even if it's cheap meat, which we don't advocate for, I mean, we advocate for regenerative farming and treating the animals well, but if I had a choice between a bag of chips and like the cheapest ground beef you could find at Walmart, I would go with the cheapest ground beef you could find at Walmart. It's still a lot healthier than the bag of chips. So make the steps and progress in the right direction. When you start practicing fasting, you save money and time. Then you could apply it to healthier food.
100%. I'm on the same page with you, man. Like, when I was 26 and I was 24 when I started carnivore for the first time. I was getting the budget cuts of meat in the outer aisle, the budget grocery store in New York City. And like, guess what? Just switching from the ultra processed crap to that, I started to feel amazing. And this stuff is all a process, man, where I do think there are a lot of people that are like, if it's not regenerative grass finished from day one, you're doing it wrong. I think we'd both disagree with that, where it's like, dude, just get in the game. And then over time, you'll learn more. You'll understand where your food comes from. You'll start maybe building a relationship with a local rancher and researching regen. And then you'll start sourcing your stuff directly from them, which is what a lot of you and I talk about. But just to start, man, if you're just shopping the outer aisle and you feel like crap and you're eating hot Cheetos for lunch and pizza and you feel like you can't get out of bed in the morning, like, just start buying the budget cuts of meat and cooking those meals and doing that for a couple months, and you're going to feel like a completely different person. Like, 100%. I guarantee it.
You make progress, not perfection.
Definitely.
Even the cheapest eggs out there are healthier than a bag of chips.
Yes.
And they're very cheap, right? So we don't expect anybody to be perfect here, but to make progress. And to your example of that, like you were eating cheap cuts of meat and you made progress, and then you just go to the next level of your health or your next level. And there's a lot of free things we can do for our health as well. I mean, I mentioned fasting. There's also earthing and grounding, walking outside barefoot, getting sunshine. It's a free thing you can do. I can tell you this, my favorite supplement that I recommend for everybody watching and listening, I outline it in chapter 10 of the book. It's called vitamin G, and vitamin G is anti-inflammatory. It helps with fat loss, brain fog. UC Davis has a couple studies that I put in the book that showed individuals who took vitamin G had healthier blood pressure levels, healthier blood sugar levels. JAMA, a Harvard published study in JAMA last year that I put in the book, was the most comprehensive study ever done on vitamin G. It looked at 49,275 nurses. That's a big study. And it showed the nurses who took vitamin G had a 9% reduction in dying from all-cause mortality versus the nurses who didn't take vitamin G, and a 15% reduction in dying from cardiovascular deaths versus the nurses who didn't take vitamin G. They also looked at the mitochondria, which is these energy power plants in our cells responsible for so many amazing functions. And it showed that caregivers who are under a lot of stress, who took vitamin G at night, they measured their mitochondrial health the following morning, and it showed healthier mitochondria in the caregivers who took vitamin G versus the nurses who didn't. Now, your audience, and maybe you, Brett, I'm not sure, might be wondering, what is this vitamin G? Is there an affiliate link, and do they sponsor the podcast?
That's what I'm thinking about right now.
So
I've never heard of it.
I'm glad I got you here, because vitamin G is vitamin gratitude. It's the feeling of gratitude. All those studies I just shared are on gratitude. It's free. There's no toxicity limit. You could take it as much as you want, and you get all those benefits. And when I say gratitude, it's not practicing gratitude, it's feeling it. There's a difference. And people who are more left brain, do you know if you're more left brain, more analytical, or are you more right brain, like imagination, creativity? Like,
I think I'm more analytical.
Okay, yeah, you're more analytical. So people who are left brain, they struggle with gratitude.
Absolutely. I do, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yes. I'm always just worried about the next thing. And, you know, if you were to tell me 3 years ago, like, this is what I would be doing, sitting with you, this is my life's mission, I would have given every cent I had just to be able to be in the game. And now I just noticed that my default is like, I got to do this, and versus just literally taking in, like, brother, you're doing great.
I get that.
In my brain, what's so funny is when you said gratitude, my immediate thought process was like, shit, I can't buy it as a supplement. And I'm sure other people are too. Cause it's we want, even for me, it's like, you want the silver bullet, you want the shortcut, tell me the brand to buy the supplement from, versus like, brother, you can literally just sit down, open up scripture, sit outside, and just choose to actually be grateful for these basic but amazing things in your life.
100%. And you know, I'm very similar to you. I have these goals. I hit the goal, and then it's like, what's next? And I don't slow down sometimes and kind of appreciate what's happened and just look back and all the wins. Gratitude is a feeling, not a practice, right? And when you feel gratitude, it just rewires your brain. There's a part of the brain called the reticular activation system, and God put it in our brain to filter out all of the stimulation we have every day. If you think about it, Brett, there are millions of things that are stimulating the brain every single day, from colors and lights and TV and all the conversations. And if we didn't have a filter for that, the brain would short circuit. So the RAS is the size of your pinky, and it's in your brainstem, right in your brain. And you train the RAS to see what you want it to see. It's there for survival, but now we don't really need it for that. We just need it to just function. And when you're focused on the things that are not working for you, the things you hate in your life, all of your problems, you've trained that RAS to see more of those problems. But when you train it to be grateful and appreciate all the things in your life, now there's more things that you appreciate, small things that you never would have been grateful for before. And the way this works is, if you buy a new vehicle, if you buy, let's say, a red Audi, and you do research on Auto Trader, CarMax, and you're researching red Audi. Should I buy new? Should I buy used? Should I lease it? And you finally make the decision after hours of research to drive to the dealership and buy that red Audi. And you notice, driving it off the lot, that there's a red Audi that you just bought, the RSQ8 red Audi, yeah, same one right there. And then as you drive day after day, you notice more red Audis at the stop sign, at the parking lot, and you're thinking, man, did everybody buy a red Audi because I bought it? No. You're now seeing them because you've filtered out the RS to see the red Audis. Same thing with gratitude. When you feel gratitude and intentionally do it every day, you start to see more things to feel grateful for. It's a universal law. What you appreciate, it appreciates. And what you think about, you bring about in your life. So I would say this, a practice for your audience. a method, I should say, for gratitude is every morning, think about or write down 1 to 3 things, moments, people in your life that you're grateful for, and sit in each moment, person, or thing for a minute and try to bring as many feelings as possible into that. And do that in the morning before you look at your phone, because that's when your subconscious mind is most impressionable. That's where you get the biggest bang for your buck. But vitamin G, Brett, it's the most important thing we can do.
And it's such a basic practice too. And my immediate thought when you're saying this is like, I know this is something I should do, yet for whatever reason, when you're speaking, I'm feeling a little bit of resistance towards it. And as I'm talking through it more now, I'm like, brother, you've done it multiple times. You know how good that mental state and spiritual state change actually is when you do it. So like, why do you, I feel like there's so many things that take a few minutes a day that you put off that you know you should be doing. And you compound that over a few years. And it's like, man, the most time we're ever going to spend is locked up right up here, right in our mind. So if you can become best friends with yourself through training your RAS, like why would you not be doing that?
Yeah. You know, the problem with it is that it's easy to do and it's easy not to do.
Yes.
So we kind of downplay it. I mean, if it was a supplement, like we would buy it, have it shipped to us, we would take it. But this is not something you're seeing right away. And I think we talked about this earlier. We've been taught that we need to see it before we believe it, but no, we believe it before we see it. And I would challenge your audience, do it for 30 days. 30 days. Every morning, 1 to 3 things you're grateful for, and then report back. You know, do you feel like you're happier and healthier as a result of doing that, or have you not noticed anything? Well, I haven't seen one person do that for 30 days straight and not notice anything. You're going to be happier and healthier, and you're going to want to continue to do it. In my luggage there that I brought here, I have my notebook. In my notebook, I write down every morning what I'm grateful for, 15, 20 things. I take it with me when I travel. I haven't missed a single day in about 9 years of writing down gratitude. Brett, I have notebooks stacked like this, filled with gratitude and goals. I don't miss a day. My new paradigm, the way I operate, is from gratitude. And when you do that, not only are you a better person, but the world becomes a better place. You're not part of the problem, you're part of the solution. So I think it's an incredible resource that we underutilize.
Man, it's probably really helped you in just like the difficult times and all the adversity you've probably experienced behind the scenes as an entrepreneur, because that seems like the biggest thing is there's so many incredible blessings, and there's just a lot of like, you know, inner pain and resistance that you experience trying to build something 0 to 1 on your own.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
100%. You become unstoppable, bro. Nobody can mess with me. If somebody messes with me, if I feel offended, I'm giving them permission. Like, nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent.
Yeah.
So we give consent to that. And when you operate from gratitude and when you operate from abundance, all those comments, all the challenges, they just deflect off of you like water off of a fish. And that's the way that I operate.
What was the feeling when you actually got indication that you guys had hit the New York Times bestselling list, which is like the number one, probably the biggest goal of any person that publishes a book ever, is to crack that list, because it's so, there's just like this prestige that comes to it.
Yeah.
What was that feeling actually like for you?
It was a weird feeling. I said, holy shit. I got the email from my publisher and I said, holy shit. I ran into my fiance's room and I'm like, I made the list. It was an amazing feeling. Here's something that's interesting. You might have trouble understanding what I'm about to share because you're a left brainer. And if you're a left brainer, you might have trouble understanding what I'm about to share. But 6 months ago, I wrote on a card. And on this card 6 months ago, I wrote these words I'm going to read to you right now. It says, I am so happy and grateful now that I'm my published book, Metabolic Freedom with Hay House, is a New York Times bestseller. I wrote this 6 months ago, and I have carried this card with me every day for 6 months. I've read it every morning throughout the day. I have a vision board of Metabolic Freedom book cover, New York Times bestseller. So I expected it to happen. So much so that even a month ago, I was filming with my videographer, and I said, hey, let's film a video celebrating hitting the list and edit it. I'll pay you for all that because we're going to hit the list. And then I was at Meatstock last week, 3 days before the list came out. And there was a documentary from Stephen Thomas from the UK was doing this documentary. And it was a carnivore documentary. He interviewed me for it. And he said, introduce yourself we're filming here. Introduce yourself to the audience. And I said, my name is Ben Azadi. I'm the New York Times bestselling author of Metabolic Freedom. Days before the list came out.
Wow.
So I expected it, but it was a weird feeling because there was still some doubt, as there always is. And it's not about me hitting the list. I want to make that clear. It's cool. There's ego involved. Like, I'm a New York Times bestselling author, but more important than that, I was telling you before we hit record, the message of metabolic health is entering the mainstream.
Yes.
That list is super mainstream. New York Times doesn't like the idea of people eating red meat and saturated fat and practicing fasting. And that's what I talk about in the book. So the fact that that book got on such a mainstream list, it's a win for you, for Harry. It's a win for all of us. And it's just super cool, bro. I'm very grateful for it. And like I said, I wrote it down months ago and it manifested, man.
That takes stones to introduce yourself that way in a documentary too. It's one thing to record the video, which is so cool.
Yeah.
But to literally be interviewed in a documentary that's going to be publicly released and just be like, I know it in my bones that this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, brother. I learned that from Bob Proctor. It's not a fake it till you make it sort of thing. Let's be clear there. It's all great actors live their part. And Neville Goddard, who's a great author from the 60s, and Bob Proctor taught me, you use your imagination to bring the future into reality. And that's what I did. I used my imagination to bring the future. I'm a New York Times bestselling author into the present. That's the way it works. And, when I spoke at the Biohacker Expo, I did a keynote there in Miami a few months ago. And I brought out the goal card and I told everybody, there were hundreds of people there. I said, my book comes out in a couple months. And this is the way you manifest things in your life. You write it down. And here's what I'm going to manifest. I told everybody, like, I'm going to show you in May when the book comes out that this works. And I had no idea it was going to work, but I believed it was going to work and it worked, bro.
Wow. Man, that is so powerful. And what's really cool, to piggyback off what you're saying, is I would say the podcast I've listened to the most the last 2 years is the Founders Podcast by David Senra. He's actually down in Miami.
Oh yeah, David and Layla.
Yeah, I've never met him before.
I had my book launch party at their house.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah.
Senra?
Yeah, the Centers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, David Centner. It's pronounced.
Okay.
Yeah.
This guy's David Senra.
Oh, so it's
who
different.
hosts a different guy.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking.
Dude,
about
you would love this show. He does one podcast a week. He reads a biography every single week, and then he podcasts about it. And it's great founders throughout history.
I'm writing it down right now.
Yeah, he does a couple contemporaries, but it's mostly all founders from like 50 to 100 years ago. And I think the reason why he does that is that venture capital wasn't really a thing back then. It was basically just all these guys bulldogging their businesses into existence and changing the course of the U.S. But there's a couple central themes that he hits on, whether it's James Dyson, John D. Rockefeller, et cetera, it's belief comes before ability.
Oof.
So it's like,
love it.
And it's so funny because, Bob Proctor, some people are like, oh, this is hippy dippy woo stuff. And then I meet guys like you or other people that I've met that have been practicing Bob's teachings for dozens of years that have completely changed their lives. But then you listen to the Founders Podcast of the men that actually built the United States, and they all had belief before ability. So call it what you want, manifestation, belief, etc. All these great people that you look up to, they're practicing the exact stuff that you're talking about. And then your evidence of it with what you just did with your book, too. It's so cool, man.
I'm going to listen to that podcast.
You're going to love it, brother.
I just wrote the note down. Every great thing that was accomplished started in here with your thoughts, with your mind, your subconscious mind. And I know to some people who are analytical, this sounds woo-woo. It sounds like it's crazy. But, if you're not living the life that you want right now with your health, your finances, your relationships, your happiness, then I would argue that your way is not working. Why don't you try mine? Why don't you try it for 30 days and see what it'll do for you? Mm-hmm. It's so important that in Metabolic Freedom, there's a 30-day plan at the end of the book, a beginner plan and an advanced plan. There's an affirmation I have everybody read as part of that plan. Like there's things in there that are just way beyond just what you eat. That's part of that plan. And if you just do that plan for 30 days, watch what it'll do to change your life. And you could have fear and doubt about what I'm sharing here, which some people do, and that's fair. Or you could have faith and belief. And the interesting thing about faith versus fear, it's the same thing. It's you're putting your energy into something you cannot see. Why don't you choose something that might actually help you? Give it 30 days. Bob Proctor said, faith is the ability to see the invisible, to believe in the incredible, which will permit you to achieve what the masses think is impossible. Mm-hmm. That's what faith is. So I would argue just give me 30 days and report back and let's see what it does for your life.
That's amazing. So you're putting a legitimate playbook at the end of the book that everyone can follow.
Yes. I talk about your environment, doing an audit on people in your life that don't support you. There's a gratitude practice. There's a step count that you want to hit each day. And there's a specific affirmation that changes your self-image to prevent you from sabotaging yourself. Because that's how so many people make a conscious decision to get healthier and they end up sabotaging themselves. It's because of something called their self-image. They didn't change what's rooted in their subconscious mind. There's a book from the 1960s called Psycho-Cybernetics. Have you heard of that before?
I've read pieces of it. I've never read the full thing, but I have it on my list to dig into it. People are obsessed with it.
Dig into it. And I'll give you the synopsis here. It was Dr. Maxwell Maltz wrote the book. He was a world-renowned plastic surgeon at the time. And he would work with individuals who had wicked facial deformities. These people that had these facial deformities were unhappy. They were depressed. They were self-conscious because of the way they looked. So they would hire Dr. Maxwell Maltz to perform surgery, plastic surgery, to remove these facial disfigurements. And he noticed that even after the surgery, Brett, they were still unhappy, depressed, and self-conscious. Because at a self-image level, at a subconscious level, they still identified with the facial disfigurement. Wow. They would literally look in the mirror, even though their disfigurement is gone, and they would see themselves with it. So nothing changed until he changed their self-image and imprinted this new self-image of somebody without this facial disfigurement. Then they got happier, more confidence in their lives changed. If you identify with your autoimmune disease, if you identify with your diagnosis, if you identify as being overweight, you can make a conscious decision to get better, but you will find that you'll sabotage yourself because you cannot outperform your self-image. So in the book, I talk about that, and I actually give a specific affirmation that you write down and you read every day, kind of like this goal card I had, and you read it every day until you do it enough times within 30 days, and it replaces the old self-image with the new self-image. Then you become unstoppable. So that's part of the 30-day plan as well.
I love that you put that practical playbook in there, because 30 days is enough. Where day 1 to day 30, if you do everything that you're prescribing in the book, you really can transform or see significant improvements that just snowball to the rest of your life. And you're so spot on, where everyone has faith, whether they say they do or they don't. If you're someone that doesn't have faith, you're just choosing to actually put it in the wrong things. These negative outcomes that have never even happened that you're just so worried about might happen.
That's right.
Like, why not just choose the best for yourself? Why not?
Why not, bro?
Or at least you'll feel better at a minimum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Brother, what's the best way for people to get the book?
We have a special opportunity for your audience to get the book with a free course and some exclusive interviews. So I put together 12 lessons on the metabolism, completely free. We're not collecting a credit card and charging you later. It's completely free. And then we have some exclusive interviews in that course with Dr. Jason Fung, Megan Ramos, Cynthia Thurlow, and Dr. Daniel Pompa. So if you go to metabolicfreedombook.com, you can see different retailers to buy the book. It's available on hardcover, Kindle, and on Audible and Spotify. I narrated it myself as well. It's also available at Barnes & Noble, at the bookstores. But if you go to metabolicfreedombook.com and buy it there and put your name, email, and order number, you'll get instant access to the course and the interviews.
That's awesome, man. We'll link to everything in the show notes. But, brother, I'm so grateful that there's men like you that exist that are just continuing to fight the good fight. I'm so glad that you just decided to put your heart and soul into this book too. Like I was saying, as soon as I started reading it, when you sent it over to me last night, I was like, dude, I want to get this for my parents. If there's someone out here that's listening to the podcast and you're thinking about your mom or your dad or someone in your life that just needs these simple and practical levers to pull that might be able to change your life, I really hope that you share this podcast or buy them a copy of the book. It's an amazing gift. It's something I love to do. Instead of giving someone a bottle of wine, bring them a book, bring them a jar of beef tallow, just something that can actually help make them better. But man, we're going to just try and pump it far and wide. And I just can't wait to see all the people that you continue to impact, man.
Let's go, brother.
Thank you so much,
dude. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate that. And it's the people that we continue to impact, you and Harry, and the work that you're doing. I love what you're doing, bro. It's been cool to see what you've done in just 3 years. Just think about where you're going to be in a year from now, 5 years from now. So it's exciting times for us. We're in the trenches together. We have the answer, the solution to so many people's prayers and cries out there. So I'm grateful to be on the mission with you and Harry, my friend.
Thank you, brother. Until next time.
Until next time.
Yeah.